Good day, folks. This is a brief discussion of Professor Corey Anton's video regarding the phenomenology of the senses. And I think what Professor Anton is doing here is kind of making an argument that although the way we experience things is a kind of, spontaneous simultaneity of all the integrated senses together, we can kind of parcel out the sort of spatiotemporal experience of kind of, he's not really talking about smell or taste, but we could infer things about smell or taste, but the kind of touch, sight, and hearing as different experiences from a spatio-temporal perspective. And so I just set this video up in terms of the test questions, but I'd really encourage you to go watch the video. And, while you're at it, you can like Professor Anton's page. I mean, he's put hundreds of very interesting videos up, and I just think um, it's a great space to kind of spend your time, instead of just clicking around on the web. Professor Anton gives you something to think about. So, all right, in our lived experience, the lived body does what to all of the contributions of the senses? Well, it integrates and synthesizes in a kind of seamless experiencing. So, in real life, we don't parcel out the senses, they're all happening in a sort of synchronous simultaneity. So then he begins to talk about touch. And he says touch has no possibilities. And I mean, that seems perplexing, and indeed it really is, but what he's trying to say, I think, is this idea that touch is a realm of pure actuality, and you touch where you touch, and the only way you could make it a sort of possibility is by invoking another sense, right? The kind of sense, generally of sight, generally of sight, I mean, maybe you could smell something and then see, if there's something like in a place that you can't see, but like touch is a realm of pure actuality. And this continues to the second slide here. What does he mean that touch is the sense of pure actuality? And he says something along the lines of this. He says, touch only allows for what you're actually touching, right? It's purely actual. Touch requires sight for possibility, and touch requires an engagement, a commitment, an actual presence. It's you can, like, through recordings and pictures, we can see and hear someone who's not there, like even in a mediated sense, in both in the past, and there's a sort of, you think of Zoom, a simultaneity and a synchronicity, but you can't touch the other person, you can't share a drink online, and you can't stroke someone's hair online, although you can. I mean, that's the same for, of course, like smell and taste. You can't, you can't smell or taste a chocolate chip cookie online, but you can see a chocolate chip cookie. So, all right, vision gives a sense of permanence in a way that sound doesn't. And so now he's going to start talking about how vision is different than hearing, and this idea of the permanent versus the temporal, right? The evanescent, the transient. And so, vision, if you look around the room, you see these objects, and they've been there for long periods of time, and they're stable, they're not moving, they're kind of a function of the physicality of objects in space. However, if you're hearing something, it's already vanishing, right? Sound doesn't stabilize the way that objects in sight stabilize. That you, you know, um, And so sound in that sense, like words, if you've heard it, or even like, a musical, think of like a musical composition. I mean, you could single out one note or something, but you can't really like stabilize it. There's this flow or flux through time, and it's not static the way objects in space are. If you hear it, it's always sort of transforming out of existence. Um, all right, so what does Walter Ong say about dead elephants? Well, here Professor Anton's talking about sort of, sound as sort of co-present to, it's a function of like being there. Uh, I mean, you can see stuff as I said, that's very removed. But if you hear stuff, it's there. It's in your presence. So, uh, what does Walter Ong say about dead elephants? Well, he gives the story that you can see a dead elephant, you can smell a dead elephant, but if you hear an elephant, he's not dead. So watch it. Okay, well, I've already said a lot about sound, so I'll move through these three rather quickly. Professor Anton says sound opens us up to the world of eventfulness, activity, and action, and sound separates from its source, right? That in a way that vision we can sort of pinpoint that object in the distance, whereas like if you hear a bang, you're not exactly sure where it comes from, right? I mean, hearing without the added sense of vision, it gives a sense of sort of mystery of the occurrence of actually where in the geography stuff is. So sound separates from its source, and it doesn't have the same perspectival character as vision. So you can't, in the video, Professor Anton gives this sort of holographic image of Darth Vader and Yoda, this idea that vision is a dissection sense that you can move all about an object and manipulate it, and like in so many ways like the visual and the dimensional and the perspectival is kind of what the empirical scientific method. And then Professor Antone says you can never hold a sound still and vary it from a different angle. It's not perspectival like vision, right? So that's it. I mean, I could, y- you know, I mean, I could go but that is, that's singing. That's not talking. You can't stabilize the sound the same way that vision is always stable. Objects in space, we can see them, we can rotate our perspective on them, we can see them from all kinds of different angles. Professor Antone says sound is fading and doesn't allow for kind of re-going over possibilities. And so, I mean, that's why when you say what, like you didn't hear somebody and they have to repeat it. Well, in a way, that's a sort of going over a possibility, but it's very different. It sort of rips you out of the flow of the conversation. It sound surrounds and engulfs us in a way that sight does not. Sound is sort of total environmental. It's right, sound waves go in all directions, whereas vision is very linear in that sense. It's right. I mean, you can't see what's behind you, right? Your vision goes what about 180 degrees. You can definitely hear what's behind you. Uh, so Professor Antone says, when I see something, I see it over in the distance, but when I hear something, it's already intimately near, right? I mean, you can't hear stuff that's really, really far away. I mean, you can see things that are, you can see the stars and stuff, which are a billion light years away. Um, but you can't hear stuff and make it out if it's, like more than what, like you could hear like an explosion from a couple miles away, but you can't hear somebody's voice for more than somebody screams at you 100 meters, right? I mean, sound is a sort of intimate, close proximal experience. Sound, therefore, sound collapses and liquidates distances. There's a sort of closeness there, a sort of intimacy with sound. So, as a final point, we can think of these technological media as different modes which manipulate vary our sense ratios. That is, some of these media require more touch than others. Some of them require vision, while others are like strictly auditory. You can think of like the radio, it's not a visual, right? Whereas YouTube, which is almost like the radio in a way, like not only is it visual, you have to like watch stuff because people make videos, but it's visual because if you like walk away or something, you get bombarded with a million ads. You need the visual and the touch dimension to skip stuff on YouTube. And so you could see that like alters, in unique ways our various sense ratios. And then you could think of other stuff like Alexa, which like you don't really look at Alexa, right? But you engage, you interface with Alexa via the oral or the spoken, the hearing mode, right? They can kind of think of stuff like self-driving cars and what that's going to mean and how that like frees up the body to do other stuff. And like the sense ratios involved in virtual reality. And again, like so for so many of these, all we're talking about are the three senses that Professor Anton talked about, which would be vision, hearing, and touch. Which is to say, like it's only, it's very challenging to replicate or kind of mediate stuff like sense and taste. I mean, that stuff would be food, and I guess on some other level like perfume and colognes and that kind of stuff. But as a final thought, the idea of virtual reality, it's fascinating. Like how are the engineers going to solve the problem of movement? We already see like people who have VR headsets and stuff, like walking into their TV or kicking their wall or something. Um, it's a very interesting problem of sensation.